Well, hi, everybody. My name is Garrett Schmidt. I am the CEO and managing editor for VBC Exhibit Hall, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's live webinar hosted by Lucerna Health and Sanitas Medical Center as a special guest. And today's session is called Unlocking the Connection Between Provider Satisfaction, Patient Experience, and Actionable Insights. There's going to be a lot of practicals shared today, and I think it'll be a very energetic conversation that will be very interesting. So looking forward to hearing from our speakers, who I will introduce momentarily. A few items of note as we get started here. Everyone is joined today in listen-only mode, so this is a traditional webinar format. You don't need to worry about turning off your camera or your microphone or whatever. We can't see you or hear you, but we do want to hear from you. We are going to have a time for some Q&A, for some audience questions towards the end. And during that time, you'll get a chance to interact with our speakers. So if you have a question at any time during the presentation, go ahead and drop your question into your attendee module. There's a place that actually has a spot for questions specifically, which is different than the chat, but go ahead and drop them in there. We're going to get to as many as we can during the allotted time today. If for some reason we're not able to get to yours or don't get to yours, don't worry, someone will reach out via email to make sure that we do answer your question afterwards. So even if we're just wrapping up at the last second, go ahead and drop your question in. And then finally, the session today is being recorded. So what's going to happen is, let's say about an hour after we conclude, you'll receive an email, and there will be a link to where you can download the slides from today's session, as well as review the recording. And that way you can review it at your own leisure and or share it with colleagues and friends, and we hope that you do. So without further ado, wanted to briefly introduce our speakers today. We have with us Mr. Craig Thomas, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Lucerna Health. And we have Miss Adriana Murillo, and she is the co-founder and CCO of Lucerna Health. And we have Dr. Raul Daza, and he is the Chief Medical Officer with Sanitas. So welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett, for doing this and giving us the opportunity. We appreciate it. And thanks for everybody joining. And so we don't forget, have a great holiday season. All right, Dr. Daza, all yours.
Oh, mine. All right. Thank you, Craig and Adriana, for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk about a little bit about what we've been doing as a company and how we've been working together and collaborating. So just a brief introduction about Sanitas Medical Centers for the audience who maybe have or have not heard about us. But we are a holistic primary care group. I would like to call us an advanced primary care group that has been here in the United States since 2015. We have a background in the insurance side and also the provider side internationally, with presence in 9 different countries, mostly in Latin America. And here we're focused on the delivery side of things in primary care. And as we've been growing, we've been going into mental health. Started with embedding behavioral health in our primary care centers with our collaborative care model. We currently serve all lines of business, Medicare, commercial, also Medicaid, with a presence in Tennessee, but mostly centered on the Affordable Care Act population in Florida with our partner on the payer side, with about 500,000 lives that we take care of. As we've been growing, we have about 60 medical centers and about 200 providers. We've also created additional programs on the specialty care side, advanced care program or palliative care. We have a care at home program, and mental health programs with our SMI program, severe mental illness program, and also Be Well, which is for mild to moderate anxiety depression. And all of this surrounded with our 24/7 virtual care capabilities. So an advanced and comprehensive primary care medical center that has been growing here for the past, it's going to be 10 years now. So
Thanks, Raul, and thanks for joining us on the call here. And it's been an amazing journey for Sanitas. We started working together at Lucerna with Sanitas. I think you had 0 medical centers and maybe 5 employees. And so It's been amazing to help with the growth in the new markets and all the programs and see all the advancements in value-based care and things like that. Lucerna Health, on the right here is what we think of as our playbook. And the playbook's really a combination of technology, an experienced services team in areas like engagement, provider operations, of course, what we're talking about today in patient experience, provider experience. And our playbook really is driven by the LEAP platform. So think of that as data management, analytics, and process integration capabilities. And I like to think about it, it's solving one of the common stubborn problems in healthcare, which is how can we turn our data from everywhere into an asset instead of a hassle? And then we use that data to go around the horn there and interact with consumers, whether they're members of a health plan or patients of a provider or a hospital system, engage them in their care, engage the providers, match them, support efficient, scalable provider operations, a lot on provider performance so nobody's flying blind. And we think all of that collectively drives a lot of the results that everybody's looking for in our business. And so today, of course, we're going to focus in on patient provider satisfaction and how that drives results that matter. Okay, just we have a little bit of a flow here, and we have some cut pages just so we can keep this organized. We're going to start with a little bit on why is patient experience important for results. Same thing with provider. Then how do you get the insight? That's more than a number. It's deep, actionable insight that operators can actually use, in the real world to improve things. Probably the most important part is activation. How does Raul and his teams across all that complexity use deep insight to improve things and get results that matter? And then we'll talk a little bit about the actual bottom line business results that this entire process can drive. So we'll try to keep it organized and let you know when we're moving from chapter to chapter.
Perfect. And Garrett, I think we're gonna move to the poll now.
Okay, yes, we have a polling question so that you can play along at home. And I'm going to pull it up on your screen here. So you should see this momentarily. This is anonymous, by the way, so feel free to play along here. And we're going to show the results so you can kind of see where you stack among your colleagues. And the question is, what outcome does a positive provider and patient experience impact the most? So you might say, well, all of these things. But if you had to pick one, is it better relationships with the patients? Is it increased patient retention? Is it improved patient care plan adherence? Or improved provider recruitment and retention? So which one would be impacted the most by a positive provider and patient experience? And so we'll give you guys a few more seconds to think about that and answer. And then again, we'll close it down and show the results here. Okay, I think most people have submitted their responses, so I'm going to go ahead and close it down in about 10 seconds and then show you the outcomes here. All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and let me go ahead and pull up the results. All right, so are you guys able to see the results on your screens here?
Yep.
Yeah, maybe a quick reaction and then see what Adriana and Raul think. First, the two big ones, of course, are better relationships with patients. And we actually have a blog out there about the importance of the, doctor-patient or care provider-patient relationship and how that affects, results and so forth. So that's a really strong one. And adherence to the care plan through engagement and visits and participation in programs and things like that is really important. I think Raul may convince you that provider satisfaction is really important to recruitment and retention. And, I worked at Lucerna for a while, and, um, clinical organizations go as far as their clinicians, and so it's pretty important. But Raul, what's your reaction to?
So no, I mean I like where the poll ended because ultimately it's all about patient outcomes, right? And we are in this value-based care environment, and it's about patient outcomes. To be honest, I think all of those are correct answers on the screen, right? That positive provider and patient experience really creates that sense of trust between a patient and a provider, and that sense of trust is what then takes over for the patient to be adherent to their medical plan, to their treatment plan, get the outcomes that are expected, and those improved outcomes ultimately lead to patient retention. And on the provider side, it really leads to that sense of purpose and belonging, which is what leads to retention of the provider staff and also with recruitment. A lot of the providers that we end up recruiting come, referred from other providers or the community. So I honestly believe it's all of those, but I strongly support the that this is about improving patient, guided around the principles of the quintuple aim. It's about improving health outcomes, right?
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So we're going to go into quickly here importance. Um, I'm assuming a lot of you, believe in the importance of these things, which is why you've registered for the webinar and participating. And I would echo what Garrett said is, please share this with your colleagues that you think might have interest in this topic. So
Adriana, I think we're not. I'm not
we're not
seeing this
seeing,
anymore.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we may need Garrett to share.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's
I can
Yeah,
keep going.
one moment, folks. We're working live here, so let me pull up the slides, and I'll get that up here momentarily.
So this first slide that's going to come up, we cite some studies that show up to 20% higher patient satisfaction when their provider is more engaged and more satisfied. So it's that correlation between patient and provider satisfaction, and it's really this cycle of where it's reinforced, where the provider's engaged, the provider's supported by the company. A lot of the administrative stuff, they have good feedback, and that then there we go. Thanks, Garrett. And then that ties into improved patient care, patient satisfaction. You get good feedback. That feedback, by the way, starts to show up in retention, Google ratings, market reputation, those kinds of things. And then the provider is happier because their patients are more engaged. So it's a nice cycle of positive reinforcement, as we're calling it here. So that connection is pretty important, we think.
Greg, if I may add, there's another piece here that I don't think we spoke about before, but I saw it somewhere. It also leads to decreased patient errors, right?
Mhm.
And we know how those patient errors have an additional cost on the other end, right? With on the medical legal side, and not just retention or patients leaving, but there's a enormous cost around medical errors. So empowering this provider and patient relationship does decrease medical errors as well.
Yeah, I think I read a long time ago that the number one predictor of a medical malpractice lawsuit is the trust and relationship that patient had with the provider. So it's interesting. The next slide, Garrett, is
Craig.
Oh yeah, sorry, Adrian.
Yeah, just one more thing, and that's that I think it's important that, uh, and we learned this early on, that you tie the measurement of the patient experience and the provider experience to financial outcomes. And so what happens is, yes, you're getting higher patient satisfaction, but you also are able to see if the practice is growing, the revenue is growing. As Raul was saying, the errors are getting lower. So there's all these elements that allow you to now get more investments into the type of programs that you need to implement to be able to continue to make progress on patient experience.
The next one, just a quick point you're probably aware of either. Provider resources are scarce and expensive. And this whole issue of provider burnout and dissatisfaction, you see here on the right, according to a recent AMA survey, about 48% of providers report some level of burnout. And there's a real financial impact. It takes a big expensive effort to recruit and train and support a provider. And so, particularly if you're growing, like Sanitas is opening new markets and new medical centers, every year, that market reputation in the provider community is pretty important to getting the quality providers that you need to take care of the patients. So if there's nothing else here, that's it. Unless Raul, you have anything?
No, I mean, I think maybe I think you already said it. Recruitment of providers is not easy. There's the shortage of providers is very noticeable and palpable. That's one of the things that I focus a lot of my effort every year with expansion, and also even in the centers that we have with the growth of population, recruitment is difficult. So provider retention is something that we have to measure, we have to be on top of. And if we don't know why providers are leaving, if we don't measure it, and I think that's what I know that what you're going to be talking about next. We don't know what we have to do in order to improve that retention. So um, it is a key metric for us, provider retention.
Okay, we're now going to move into how do you get deep insight that you can actually use so to improve in a variety of ways we'll cover here in a minute. But we just wanted to spend a quick moment on the LEAP platform and how that's essential to the personalized deep measurement across a whole range of topics. But this is a simple picture of the data management analytics and integration platform. You need to have all the data coming in. That's the left, from the EMR, payer, claims, eligibility, population health, analytic outputs, consumer touch points. And then that goes into the middle, which is really where all the data is prepared for use. And probably what's important here is a full consumer 360, unified data, deep insight, the golden record, all those kinds of things. So everything that there is to know about the consumer. Same thing with the provider 360. And then the attribution and workflow and all that is matching providers and patients, looking at patient preferences, provider capacity, services, healthcare areas of focus, those kinds of things, across there. And then the communication hub is how you drive this personalized omni-channel automated triggered campaigns that get the surveys out there. And then the most important thing I think is on the right. And these are what we call connected processes. How do you take the insight and actually embed them into the operational processes where the improvements and results happen? And you see here, it's wide range of examples. We're talking about patient experience and provider experience today. We've touched on how that helps with patient care and growth, but you can also use this platform to acquire customers and win back customers. Optimizing is really that matching and panel management. And then performance management, you'll see how this feedback goes into the performance management and compensation programs for the provider teams. You don't need all of this, certainly not to get started. But the more of this you have, the richer the program will be. Okay. So that's kind of the mechanics of the machine, how we do it. And Adriana is now going to walk us through how you get the deep insight you need.
Thanks, Greg. And I think we like to start here because we believe that these are 4 key elements that allow you to go from a fragmented collecting scores type of process to an integrated program that allows you to really take a more proactive approach to patient experience and provider experience. And so starting on the left to the right, obviously volume is going to allow you to kind of answer that question of, are these results fair, balanced, and representative of a sample? And we're going to get into a lot of that later. Depth is really important because you're going to be able to then now kind of measure the full scope of the experience. And that's really important with a survey that gives you more insights and more nuanced answers. Obviously, the trust is not just important in the provider side, that they know that these are confidential answers, but also the patient, so that they really feel like their feedback is it's heard. And then the last thing is analysis, and I think this is more around how do you go beyond measuring into taking action. So we're gonna kind of go real quick around these 4 elements. So over here, I think the most important message is that without credible volume, you don't enable an operator to take action. And so when we're talking about what does that mean, and we go into, okay, how do you get a representative sample so that you can talk about a good amount of insight on a service line. So service line like primary care, urgent care, diagnostic, or even the mode. Is it in person? Is it at home? Is it virtual? Or the location? Because we've noticed that the scores that completely change from location to location in the same geography. And the care team, we're going to talk a little bit about how do you operationalize this insight into care teams, but it's really, really important that sample size at the provider level. And then you can stratify that sample to say, okay, do I understand how the experience is different if you're looking at, for instance, the tenure of the providers or the specialty of the providers, and obviously the processes. Another important element is around how do you structure the survey, and we tend to avoid the yes/no questions because they don't give you rich insights. We go into more of a Likert scale type of question, just because it allows you to get deeper into what's really driving the experience, and then we do top 2 analysis and for trending. And the other thing that is important for us is, hey, if we structure a program or we recommend to our customers is, let's maintain that program somewhat similar over time so you can track those changes. And then from year to year, as you're implementing programs and you want to learn more, then kind of vary some of those questions or add or delete some so that you can still continue to evolve your program. Now we're talking about depth. And so depth is really important because you want to be able to measure end-to-end the moments of truth. And generally, the most common approach of the industry is that the payers and the providers have dual surveys that are sent around the experience to the consumer. But for the consumer, they're just having a single experience. And so they don't have this division of member or patient. And so what happens with that, well, that's good. It creates fragmented insight, and you're not really, it's not a unified view. So what we like to do, and we've done that with Sanitas and with Florida Blue, is we take a very different approach to how we're measuring this so that the entity or the organization that is asking the question is the one that is the best position to address the problem. So if you look at over here, you have the moments of truth at a high level, and then the color coding between, is this more of a who's positioned to take action? Is it the payer or the provider? And in some cases, it's going to be both. And in those cases, you're really looking at what aspects are you measuring. So for us, that's really important because it's going to give you a much better insight you're going to be able to collaborate better with the payer, and then you're going to be able to integrate that for a holistic view. And so it allows you to like really get in depth, and we'll see in response rates, we're going to show you how that works. And so when it comes to achieving high response rates, and you can see here kind of like a program with Sanitas and the results that we get, always start with the industry standards because they're proven. And in some cases, they're important, like in Medicare with HCAP. But then you have to customize as needed for relevance. And what we mean with that is that we, Lucerna, we see that our customers, like Sanitas, have very different, and other customers that we have very different operating models and clinical models. So you can't really assume that the same standard industry is going to give you the insights that you need. So at that moment, you start to customize for relevance. And then when it comes to the response rate, we talked about who's triggering the survey that is more best positioned to address the problem. In the case of our experience with Sanitas, we're sending the survey from a personalized perspective from the provider, so that it feels more it gives you better results. And it also we then bring on the communication hub to be able to understand what's the better timing to send surveys, the frequency, you gotta avoid fatigue. And then we create all these feedback loops so that when you're talking to either the patient or the provider around the feedback, they see that their voice has been heard and that what they're saying matters, and they see those results coming in. So those are the keys that we believe drive a lot of the results that we have around response rates. We have measured this before, and with the exact same population, when some of those questions are coming from the payer versus the provider, it's almost like a 10-to-1 ratio of response rates. Craig, Raul, anything else you want to share here?
No, I think you mentioned everything that's important. I'll reinforce the last thing that you just mentioned. For us, when we were receiving the surveys only from the payer, it was hard for us to believe it was enough data for it to be, I guess, valid, or for us to trust it, right? Because in some places we would receive only a few surveys back. And what you were saying, a 10-to-1 difference in our case, we're doing, it's hard to believe, but we're doing over 1 million encounters a year, right? And so if you're receiving only a few, responses back, it's like, is this really a reflection of what is happening in our medical centers or with the provider? With the service, since we've implemented it with you guys, we're receiving 10 times, I would say even more than 10 times the amount of surveys. And we can say, okay, here's where things are going. And we can also talk to I think this comes later in our conversation, talk at the center level and say, hey, listen, why is it that you're not getting the number of responses that these other centers are going? If you really want to know what's happening to you and how to implement changes and how to focus on what is going to drive that change, we need more surveys. We need more volume. So it does help a lot, and it's very, very different, our experience when we do it versus what we'd be receiving from the payers. The other piece is the customization, the language piece, right? We serve a very Hispanic population in South Florida. And if those surveys are not going in the appropriate language to the patient, you're never going to receive a response. That's key. And then the customization to help us understand why the needle is moving one way or the other, right? Specifically to what we are doing. If we're only doing an NPS or CAPS, the NPS doesn't tell you why is it that it's going up or down. The additional questions and the customization is what helps us drive actions.
Absolutely. And the questions change by, we would say like we'll have like a master template, but when you're starting to look at the customizations by service line, by priority patients or cohorts that you're measuring, by segment, like you're going to do a very different approach to Medicare than you do to Medicaid, to commercial. And then the language that really kind of creates uh, like a nice sort of program to not just implement a single survey because not all questions apply, and also to the service line. And the other thing I wanted to say that you kind of made me think about is, you know, Sanitas does a very good job at capturing language of preference, and it's very interesting to see the Hispanic sort of response to this are significantly higher. I think it's also cultural. But
Mhm.
when you look at the family unit, you see there that it's not a black and white English and Spanish sort of, but we have like, you know, some that prefer Spanish, some that prefer English, and all of those things are captured and delivered that way. So, and it's coming from the providers that actually deliver the service. So when that all of that is happening, that's how you get like better response rates and more insights.
That's right.
Yeah, I think you guys covered that well. I'll just add one thing. Basically, what you've described is a strong marketing process, and it's the same process we use to get folks to come in for a visit or navigate them to a specialist or join a care program. It's timely. It's, you know, triggered right after the visit checkout. It's relevant because it's customized for the service you got and the site of service you were at, and it's personalized for you, and it's from your doctor or nurse or whatever the case may be. And that's how you get lift, you know, and it's the exact same process we use on the other things that we do. And it's, you know, it takes a lot to do that and a lot of work on that, but it's really valuable. And we've had great, you know, great results with it. Okay, Raul, so what do you do with all this great
Uh,
insight?
all right. Well, so I guess the other piece of this is we've been talking about patient experience and the provider experience, right? So it's the same thing. We need to measure it, right? If we don't measure it, we don't know what's going on. Adriana mentioned earlier using a standardized assessment tool that has been validated is very important, so that you can compare yourself against benchmarks. So we use the Mini C, and then just as you mentioned, also adding some level of customization to it. So it's not just is there burnout or not burnout, but adding other layers that for us are important. And that's how we got to understand if it is the EMR burden, the bureaucratic burden, the administrative burden versus the environment at the center, the patient relationship, and other things like that. Doing it once is not enough. We're going to do some pulse surveys as well and then track it, right? Because as we implement action plans, we want to track that there is improvement levels there. And then, most importantly, if we measure it, well, we're going to have to do something with those results. So it's about implementing a program to prevent that burnout or work on that burnout. We chose here in Sanitas the the Stanford model for wellness, for provider wellness. It has three main domains: working on operational efficiencies, on a culture of wellness, and also personal resilience. So by adapting a model, by implementing a program, and now having the results of the survey, we can start saying, okay, this is where we have to work on, create specific action plans, and then align it with metrics within the organization, right? We spoke about retention earlier. Retention is very important, so that's something that we work on with our HR department, and it's part of the measurement. And for next year, improvement in those satisfaction scores or burnout scores for our providers is going to be part of organizational metrics as well. So with this, another piece is everybody in the organization has access to those results, from senior leadership to the regional leadership and then the local leadership. So just like you showed earlier, Adriana, we can see the overall results of the organization, but then all the way down to a center level, compare centers with each other, and then individual providers on how they're doing. Even though the survey is anonymous, um, we had a way to reach out to some that we identified that were having burnout without de-anonymizing it. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but just to reach out and say, hey, we're here to help you. If you're interested in help, just click here, or these are some resources for you. So it really closes the loop. Everybody has access to this. You measure it, you look at the insights, you analyze it, you create a program, and create this constant feedback loop and communicate it with everybody. And then another part that I don't think we've mentioned yet is the providers want to be a part of this, right? It's not
Mhm.
just let me tell you, but as part of that program is there is a physician council, and we meet with them, we hear them out. They want to be part of the solution as well, not only say that they were heard, but also be part of the solution and propose solutions. um, I didn't tell this to you guys, but I think there's two types of doctors. There's the ones who are entrepreneurs and open their own practices and thrive, and then the other ones that are, happy to be employed, and come in and see their patients and then go home. But they all want to be, they all, or we all have this sense of like, we're doctors, we know what to do, we want to be leaders, we tell people what to do and all those things. So please, listen to me. I want to be part of this. Feel empowered, and this is a way of making them feel heard and empowered. So it for us, it's helped in this, in improving the engagement, not only measuring the burnout, but also improve engagement with our providers.
Yeah,
Uh,
I also add that when we did this with you guys, Raul, and with Dr. Riguera, everybody was concerned about how do we get providers to respond, and it wasn't like a simple mini Z. Had a number of other questions, and I think you guys implemented a very nice pre-survey communication program around why is this important, how do you trust it, that is confidential, and then we implemented the digital program so that it really felt like this was going to an organization, and nobody has access to the individual questions and the person. And within a week, we were like in 50% response and very quickly got to 92% response rate, which is
Yeah.
incredibly high for any organization trying to get a very long survey through providers. And it was very helpful. And I think that drove that confidence in the program. So now when you do the next one, there is it's going to be a lot easier. But that communication pre and post is incredibly important.
I think what part of what drove us to the success rate of all of those survey responses is what I just mentioned. This is a program led by the provider team, right? The clinical team. This is not led by the human resources team, right?
mm,
So and that makes a difference, right? It's by us, for us. So I think that has helped tremendously with that trust, right?
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great program. We're now into the last kind of big chapter here. We're kind of combining up activation and results to get us to the Q&A before we run out of time. Go to the, yeah. Well, I think you covered a lot of this
Yeah,
feedbacks. I think a couple things before I kick it to you. One thing that's important, all of this insight shows up in dynamic dashboards. And these are very deep dashboards that are refreshed kind of automatically, that you can slice and dice all the different ways that we've talked about. And we have, or Sanitas has, a satisfaction team that's inside these dashboards every time. And that's kind of the method. It's not here's a PowerPoint, we're going to email it around, or we're going to look at it once a quarter or anything like that. This is a organic, um, you know, grassroots, fully embraced. Because, Sanitas always believed in a patient-centered,
yeah.
provider-centric, clinical passion and culture. And, this helps drives that culture.
Yeah, I think, Craig, the benefit for us of having these dashboards is, again, we've given this access from, again, upper leadership to the center leadership, where you can see their individual performance, the regional performance, the overall performance, have timely insights into what's going up, what's going down, and the customization piece that we mentioned earlier. Again, it's not just the MPS went up, the MPS went down, but if we're seeing the other questions like the provider index, those provider driven questions, or it's at the wait times in the lobby, or appointment availability, different things that the survey is also capturing. And we've done some trend analysis as well, see what moves the needle more than others. It really provides us the tool that we need to have, deeper conversations, right?
Yeah.
Than just the MPS is going up or the MPS is going down, but why could it be going up? Why is it going down? What are we going to do? Um,
Yeah.
we've had we actually have a reward system for the centers that our staff loves it, and it was part of the way that they started to own this, right? The centers and the team members. I'm not talking just the providers. Like everybody at the center is owning this, understanding what's happening and what's driving change. And there's competition between one center and another, and one region and another. And I received an email the other day. Actually, it was a Google chat message from one of the center managers who received their award for the end of the year, saying that she felt like she had received that her center had received a Michelin star, because it was the equivalent of a Michelin star. So
Yeah.
it really has driven a lot of change.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the other things is, with a group of patients, 500,000 in Florida, six something hundred, 100 something thousand other places, you do sometimes get detractors, and the ability to identify the detractors, use ML models to predict the detractors and reach out through a phone call, let's say, and number one, try to satisfy that particular patient issue. But also that's another learning loop,
Yep.
that's important, for NPS and other things. Plus, you don't want to leave unresolved, if somebody had some type of issue in there. But I think if we go to the
Yeah,
next, oh, sorry, Adriana.
just one super quick point around analytics. And so we obviously want to make sure that there's service recovery right away. So if somebody's expressing an issue, we have both the actual answer that triggers a certain workflow, but also we use NLP to be able to analyze open-ended questions. That gives you a little bit more depth into it, and also understand, was this like did it give you a 1 but it was really a 10 because in the comments they're saying I love you, my doctor is amazing, but they just picked the wrong number. So we do a lot of those things to understand, are they matching or not the sentiment, and do a sentiment analysis. And then the prediction is really important because you're doing reactive but timely service recovery when you find out something didn't go well in the experience. You also are looking at who are your biggest followers and brand loyalists, and you're going to implement programs around them. So it's not just about detractors. And then finally, with the prediction, you can really do prevent, like, so you're getting ahead of it. And this is all presented in a timely manner to operations. So it's not a separate organization. Is actually, as I was saying, it's the offices and the check-in and the checkout staff and everybody that kind of knows what's going on around how to the individual patient and how to take care of the ones that are not having a good experience.
Yeah, it ties a little bit to some of the models we have around no-shows and other things that, kind of disrupt things. On the next page, Garrett, and this is the last page before the grand finale,
Yep.
is,
And
go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, and I think here it's all about like performance management. So one of the things that we've done with Raul and others in the organization is, okay, how do we embed? He was talking about the centers and the administrative sort of operational staff, but there is other components around how do you embed this into a provider's scorecard performance. And as you can see here, this is one example of an actual provider scorecard at Sanitas, and how patient experience, both from an NPS and the questions that are indexing just the provider, the patient experience associated to the provider are there. I think that's really important. But then also, how do you work with payers to make sure that this is also rewarded, and as you improve experience metrics and NPS with them, and then kind of share accountability around that. And Raul, I'm sure you can talk more about this, but if you don't do this, this is where they don't, that it's not owned by the entire organization.
Yeah, like you said, Adriana, this is having everybody own it. Everybody participates in this. This is also going from talking about the quintuple aim to actually putting your money where your mouth is, right? We have that payer agreement aligned with improving NPS and patient satisfaction, as well as improving our clinician satisfaction, right? So and then there's other metrics, health equity as well, and other metrics there around population health management. But we were able, because of this, to get to those level of conversations with our payer partner, and get that value-based agreement aligned with the incentives, and then starting to get the providers aligned with it, so that it's not just a conversation about patient satisfaction is important, but it's tying it up, like I said at the beginning, with the patient outcomes, with the trusting relationship. This is important not because of not only because it drives more people into our centers, or the patient is going to recommend this to their family, but this is how you drive appropriate health outcomes. This has also helped us go from the conversation of like, well, the MPS is really about the entire experience, not just what I did as a doctor, right? But that's why we have that separation there, or showing both. It is a team effort to drive that MPS up, but you are the team leader as a provider. And look, here are 4 specific questions that talk about your interaction with the patient, and this is how you're scoring, and this is how you're comparing to the rest. So it has really changed the conversations that we have with the team, and created alignment across the organization to achieve those goals. Not only the organization, but the organization and our payer partner as well.
Yeah, as we go to the next page, all this is grouped and indexed to administrative procedures, clinical procedures, and other categories that generally align to the management structure. But Raul, this is kind of the bottom line to the
Yeah,
program.
this has been the journey, right? From initially just a survey monkey and what are people thinking, to really, I think the biggest piece of this is developing 2 programs, right? We have a patient satisfaction program with deep insights into what is happening, and we were able, because of this, to create a dedicated patient experience team that owns it and takes it down to the center level, implements action plans, helps analyze the data, and continue to drive the message that this is important. The same is happening on the provider experience side, but specifically on the patient experience side, right? Our MPS improved, like you see in the slide, 33% from 2022 to 24. We started at our MPS around 58, which we thought was great when you compare it to the rest of the healthcare industry. But now we are in the upper 70s. So I think last month's result, the November result, was in the 80s, which I think it's phenomenal. Most importantly, we can see the trend. We can see what's driving the trends, and have this deep conversations in our patient experience committee. Patient volume has increased, like you see there, 60%. We're today over 500,000 patients. We had a little less than 200,000 patients back in 2022. And you mentioned, Adriana, the importance of the volumes of those surveys, right? Without the volumes, how can you say that this is really significant and relevant data and you can trust it? And we're getting, thousands of replies, versus, maybe tens or maybe hundreds of replies when we were getting it from the payer. So putting all of this together has really helped us create to me, it's about creating the program, that is aligning the organization, is aligning our providers, and aligning us with a payer as well.
Yep. Next year we'll see the year over year for the provider
Yes,
satisfaction. So,
that's what I'm betting on.
all right. I think we're getting to the time we have left to question and answer. The last slide is just kind of a wrap up slide that, makes really the four key points here. You got to measure effectively, you get the insights, then you've got to drive the improvements, and then you can link it to business outcomes and payer contracts and things like that, because it is an investment, and you need to get business results that matter out of it and connect those up. So Garrett, I think that takes us to any questions and your wrap up.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Obviously, there's a lot of information here, and if you have a question for any of our speakers today, go ahead and drop it in now to your attendee module there, and we're going to get to as many as we can. If we don't get to yours, someone will reach out via email to make sure we answer your question. So, in no particular order here, I'm going to ask this question here first. What is the biggest challenge in improving provider performance?
Oh, well, I'll take that one.
It's a good
So,
idea.
Naturally, yes.
so the biggest challenge, I'm a doctor, so I can say it this way, right? Doctors, we know it all. So if I'm sitting down with a doctor to tell them, hey, you're not doing this or you're not performing here, they're like, if you don't have the data to back it up, if you don't have the the dashboard to show them how they're performing, how they're comparing to others, it's very difficult to create a trusting relationship from a leadership perspective with providers, who some of them have a lot more training than I have in medicine, right? Some of them are even specialists that we have to sit down with them and tell them how they're performing. But when they see the numbers and they see this compared with others, that really helps. So the biggest challenge is creating that trust, and that the data is valid, that the number of service is valid, and that that this is transparent, right? Because we're doing it with everybody. So aligning it with the scorecard is what has helped us with that challenge.
Wonderful. Okay. Next question here is, what are some key lessons learned from implementing patient experience programs in healthcare settings?
Adriana, do you want
want to
to kick
try
off?
that
Yeah,
one?
I can start, and I'm sure Craig and Raul are gonna add it. I think it's really important um, to um, to kind of take your time defining the the survey and the insights you're trying to get, to have a good starting point so that you're not kind of changing completely your program from year to year. Because when you do that, you're gonna lose that ability to do like trend analysis, and that's something that we learn kind of like the first year versus now kind of maintaining certain consistency. I think that's really important. The second one is it's really, really, really important to get that information as soon as possible into operators in a way that they can digest it. So initially we had a ton of dashboards, and it kind of became overwhelming. What do I do with this? There's so much here. You kind of need to digest it for them because that's not their day-to-day job. So we're able to kind of regroup and kind of tell the story of what's going on, what are the trends, what are the key points, what do you need to focus on in dashboards that we've evolved over time with Sanitas. I think that's really important. And the last thing I'll say is, um, if you need to have like a really good partner for activation, because you can create all the insight you want, but if there's not an organization that is owning this and on the other side, then it's just gonna stay as in reports and not something that it gets embedded into the organization. It really drives business outcomes. And once you start to show, hey, I'm getting more word of mouth, I'm growing, and I'm getting better value-based care results, and you can sort of create that correlation, then you get a lot of buy-in in the organization, and you start to drive like a stronger program.
Yeah, I don't know if we learned this or just validated. I think the biggest thing is it starts at the top. If the senior leadership says it's important and wants to drive a culture and pays attention to it and, supports the program, you can get great things. And if you don't, you don't. And I think they've had, Sanitas has had a long-standing, all the way back to, their other countries, patient, being patient-centered. And, that's, to me, this is the key to it. Okay.
All right. Next question here is what business metrics do you prioritize to ensure that patient experience improvements lead to measurable outcomes for both patients and healthcare organizations?
Yeah, I think we talked about all the, let's call them process metrics. What's the satisfaction rate? What's the NPS rate? What's the survey response rate? How are we improving things at the process level and so forth? But the business results are you growing? Are you retaining customers? Are they engaged in your programs? Are your providers busy? Are they productive? Are you getting your bonuses in your value-based care contracts? All the way through your Google ratings and other things that are important. But really, if you do it right and you measure it right, it's the standard, set of business metrics and population health metrics. And that's why we always like to say at Lucerna, what we do is help forward-looking partners like Sanitas drive better health and better business. You need both in a clinical company.
Great. We have time for one more quick question here. And this question is, what are you doing around social care?
Raul.
Sure, I can do that. So our care model has a community and a social component. So on the, again, going back to the quintuple aim, we do health equity, not just talk about health equity. So we measure social determinants of health. We actually have a metric on and in our contract with Florida Blue on us being able to capture those social determinants of health components, and we're also starting to understand and analyze our population health data based on different on those different factors. So using it to analyze the population as well. For example, understanding that certain groups of our cohorts of our population have worse outcomes. We looked at diabetic care, for example. There are certain underserved areas that are having worse outcomes. So how can we improve their health outcomes now that we know that is happening? So understanding what are those social determinants of health, also understanding that those social determinants of health vary by region. We have a large footprint across Florida, but it's not the same. The issues are not necessarily the same in our Tampa region or in Tallahassee and other areas. We found in some areas it's more driven by food insecurities, in other areas more driven by access issues and transportation issues. So and the how we address that is we do hire community health workers. They help us build a resource of community resources, right? A directory of community resources, bring it to the medical center where once we identify issues, we can write social prescriptions. So it is part of our DNA, I like to say, the social and the community approach. So it's not just measuring like we like a lot of what we spoke about today, but also understanding what is behind the data and putting in some actions to address it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, and I wanted to thank you all for a fantastic presentation today. Obviously, there's a lot here to discuss, and I thought you did a fantastic job of going over all this information. And we will be sending out a link to the recording for today, so you will have that so that you can review it. Because again, I'm sure you'll want to see those points again, and also the slides for you to download. But as we close out, I wanted to encourage you all to head over to bbcexhibithall.com and check out the Lucerna has a virtual exhibit booth that is there. And I think, oops, we lost our slides. uh, but it will be in the slides that we send out, and you can link that there and check that out and read up on them and what they're doing. It's a lot of really cool resources for you. There's also a huge library archive of a lot of different great resources there at bbcexhibithall.com for you to utilize. And then finally, if you would like to reach out to the Lucerna team or to the Sanitas team, feel free to do so. Again, their contact information is in those final slides for you. But you can also reach out to me. I'm happy to facilitate an introduction for you if that's easier. But wanted to thank you all again so much for joining us today. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and a happy holidays, because those are coming up just next week as we are recording
That's
this
right.
today. So thank you all so much, and
Happy
have a
holidays. Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you, and go Bills.
Thank you.